Okay, you're welcome along to the player rating show here on OTB AM. We're covering Better Call Saul at the moment. So we went through season 1 last week. We're going through season 2 this week and giving the players/characters ratings from the season. So season 2, as I said on this edition, Jer and Joe Conroy are with us. Lads, before we get into it, I might just give a recap of what happened very quickly in season 2 for people who are just getting through it at the moment. For people who have gone long past season 2, here's where it started, here's how it finished. So season 2 starts with Jimmy temporarily leaving the law practice. Kim comes to persuade him to get out of the pool and get back to work, but instead Jimmy drags her to a con job and they scam that trader, who's a bit of a dick, so he deserved it. Jimmy eventually then joins Davis and Maine. Meanwhile, Mike has been fired from his bodyguard role with Daniel Price Wormholes. Price, you might remember, is after buying a Hummer. Price gets into a bit of a trouble then when Nacho finds his address and steals his baseball cards. So due to said Hummer, the cops are onto Price as a potential drug dealer, so Mike calls Jimmy in to represent him. Now, Jimmy claims that Price has actually been producing fetish videos, and Jimmy ends up buying a load of cream cakes to help produce some false videos or false evidence, depending on your point of view. Kim is not happy about this. Now, Jimmy goes on to make a television ad for Davis and Maine, an Oscar-worthy piece of advertising. It does not go down well, though, with the partners of Davis and Maine, and things take a downturn in their entire professional relationship, which results in Jimmy basically getting himself fired. Kim then gets demoted to the basement for not telling Howard and Chuck about this television ad. Meanwhile, back to Mike, he needs to get rid of Tuco Salamanca. He decides to frame him rather than kill him, make him go to jail because it might cause less issues, but it actually ends up causing way more issues because after Tuco gets popped for assault with a firearm, Hector Salamanca pays Mike a trip and tells him that he will pay him to tell the authorities it was his gun rather than Tuco's gun involved in the assault. To get him to take that money, though, there's a bit of threatening involved, and Mike's granddaughter has been the victim of some of these threats. So Mike, in revenge, steals a heap of money from one of Hector's trucks and then attempts to assassinate Hector. You do not mess around with Mike, I think it's fair to say. His season 2 storyline then ends with him unable to get a clean shot on Hector with a sniper while realizing that someone has been at his car and knows that Mike is trying to kill Hector. So that is where season 2 ends for him. But back to the lawyers before we wrap this up. Kim is getting driven out of HHM. She has secured the Mesa Verde work for the company, but hasn't got reinstated to her previous level. And Howard is basically now just screwing her over. She's got a new job offer, but actually ends up taking up Jimmy on his offer to form a new company. She has lost the Mesa Verde work. Chuck has gone into the office to steal the work back for HHM and puts on an unbelievable performance. You got to give him credit for that. But he's not feeling good after being in the office for that long and putting in that much of an effort. He has passed out at home with Jimmy looking after him. And this is crucial because when Jimmy is sitting there with his brother there, passed out on the couch, he goes in and alters the Mesa Verde files in Chuck's living room and sabotages HHM's entire relationship with the company. So Mesa Verde end up going back to Kim Wexler, but Chuck suspects he's been had. The season then concludes in Chuck's living room with him covertly recording Jimmy's confession. And Jimmy's confession goes something a little bit like this.
I changed 1261 to 1216. It was me. It all went down exactly like you said. I mean, exactly. I doctored the copies. I paid the kid at the shop to lie for me. It is insane how you got every detail exactly right. So you can relax, okay? Because that brain of yours is chugging along at 1,000% efficiency.
Are you telling the truth? Or are you just trying to make me feel better?
I am saying it to make you feel better. Sure shit wouldn't be telling you otherwise. But yes, it's the truth. I'm gonna go call Howard.
Jimmy, you do realize you just confessed to a felony?
Yes. But you feel better, right? Besides, it's your word against mine.
And then the dramatic bringing out the recorder, boom, stop, click, end of season 2. Like, this is pretty good, right? Like season 2, I think maybe it's a bit of a lull for some people. Joey, might start with you here. That's an extraordinary end to the season.
Oh, I don't know. If anybody said there's a lull in this. So I watched this. I'm on the middle of actually second last episode of season 4 now. And I watched this about 2 weeks ago, and we're recording this on April Fool's Day. So if you can just remember back, if there was a major global event that might have been going on at the time that might have distracted you a little bit from, the brain popcorn that you're watching late at night to try and escape the horrors of the outside world infringing on your living room. I didn't fully realize now, just reading back through the episodes in preparation for this, this is one of the great seasons in television history. When you think about all of the stuff that's happening, when you think about what happens to Mike, when you think about the emergence of Kim, when you think about Chuck's dastardly, like the evolution of the relationship between those two and the lies that Chuck has nursed and the grievances that he's nursed for such a long period of time. This is one of the best portrayals of sibling rivalry that I've ever seen in any cultural artifacts, TV, print, anything, like drama. This is as good as TV gets, I think. And I didn't fully appreciate it at the time because obviously, virus. But this is sensational. When you kind of list off the stuff that happened there, it's like you didn't even talk about Mike making 250 grand from finding the money in the tire of the drug lorry that he shot down, or that he that's ridiculous subplot, and it's absolutely sensational. So do people really think this is a lull in the series?
I thought that, to be honest with you, I actually thought that you were going to say it was a lull, Ger. We actually haven't discussed your thought on this, and I kind of almost beat you to the chase there, because I think we might mention the Sandpiper story in a little while. Last week when you were chatting about season 1, you mentioned that became a little bit of a millstone around the neck of the writers, and I would tend to agree with that. Outside of that, it's unbelievable. Joe, you're very welcome. You're somebody who's, I think, pretty much up to date on all of this. Is it a similar situation for you that when you're looking back through all the things that happened, you're like, oh God, definitely, this was so good. And at the time, we didn't quite appreciate what was developing and flowering in front of us.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I came to, I think, on season 3, but it was kind of, initially I was a bit holding back. I wasn't sure, like, we know spin-offs can go wrong so easily. Even when I was getting pretty good buzz initially, it wasn't all in. Same it was interesting looking back at you guys last week, because I could see that you guys were kind of liking it and into it, but sort of saying, yeah, this is top class, but not necessarily. I think it's fair to say both of your appreciations would have moved on a lot by the end of season 2. So season 3 was actually a great jumping off point, because you could binge seasons 1 and 2 and then get into 3. But yeah, like Jared talking about it being up there, one of the best runs of a series all time. Hadn't really thought about it. I probably wouldn't put it stretched that far. I probably would have another season ahead of the season, even in the series itself. But talking about cliffhangers and endings, I'd probably start with the end. Like, what a final episode. What a teeing up for season 3. We can hop straight onto it now, and people can hop straight onto it now, but just everyone else was kind of left with that to mill over. And yeah.
I can only just explain this, right? So you started watching it week by week in 2016 when the season came out. Is that right? Or the next year, 2017?
When season 3 came out.
You binged.
I went. Yeah.
Right, and you watched that week by week. What was the experience of watching a TV show like this week by week? Because I can only imagine how annoying it would be for an ending like that, or for many of the episodes that end with this kind of cliffhanger. You're like, hang on, I'm just going to let the skip credits button click, click, click. Away we go. I mean, you need the instant gratification.
Yeah, to be honest, what I end up doing at times, and I've done it even with this series, is kind of let a couple of episodes pile up, and then you can kind of circle off your evening when you're going to put away 2 or 3 of them. But yeah, because it is just compulsive viewing, and yeah, it's even strange now watching things week to week. It was the same with if you remember when everyone was watching the last series of Breaking Bad, which was week to week, when most people had binged up to that point. It is strange, but yeah, it is like, it's not one of those shows that kind of goes into third gear for 35 minutes, then nails you with a kind of clickbait to go on to the next episode. It's like steady build, steady build, steady build. Oh my God, what's going to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's touch on the sibling rivalry, because that's why this is a cliffhanger at the end. This is what has driven us to this point as people who care about this particular narrative. Ger, what do you think is the main reason why there is a sibling rivalry here? If you had to pick one emotion that exists between the two brothers that stokes this rivalry, what is it for you?
Chuck is jealous of the fact that his little brother was more beloved of his parents, and actually might have been a better son, even though, you know, he ends up getting arrested for hooing in the window of a car in Chicago's sunroof. Like, notwithstanding that, he's still the favorite son, and nothing Chuck does, not being magna cum laude or whatever, since he smugly informs us about finishing first in his class, can tell us, not the giant house, which you kind of only begin to appreciate as the seasons go on, just how big. There's like other wings to the house that eventually they kind of pull back and you're like, whoa. I mean, even for somewhere like Albuquerque, where I presume property prices are not the same as LA, this guy's doing really well. And the value of the company that he's created, nothing can give him the peace of mind that the amazing scene, the mother is dying and wakes up and wants to talk to Jimmy, but not Chuck. Like that for me is the engine of the whole rivalry, and why he humiliates him again and again and again and again and again. And then he's got him at the very end of this season, where it is like pure entrapment, and it is absolutely genius. Like, he is an evil genius. So I think that's for me, that, like, you know, and at the remove of 2 weeks of having watched this, like, you just remember thinking, okay, right, shit, that was amazing.
Jealousy is the word I have down here. Absolutely, the emotion between them, and it's on a number of levels. Definitely, like, it goes back to the childhood, as we see. It goes back to the scene when the mother dies. It also goes back to Jimmy's character on a very superficial level. He's jealous of the guy that Jimmy is, like, constantly having little jibes saying, "Oh, Jimmy's got away with the old people. Jimmy's certainly a charming guy." And when we have that flashback to dinner in the house, when the lights are on and Chuck is cooking for Jimmy when he comes over, and Jimmy's cracking all these lawyer jokes, and then Chuck is trying out a few jokes on his wife later on, and she's like, "That's cute, but you're no Jimmy McGill when it comes to cracking the jokes." All these little elements of the character really piss Chuck off, because he's not as charismatic as him, he's not as personable as him, he's way more book smart than him, but he's not as street smart as him. And that is just the tension that exists between these two brothers. Like, how real then is the whole snobbery about it being a law thing, and a law thing only, when it comes to this? Like, is that, like, I think it's definitely a real factor, but how big a factor is it? I'm not sure.
It's just the manifestation of everything else. It's just one thing that he can use where he clearly has the upper hand. I don't think this is a two-way tension either. Like, you see that even though he knows it's going to unravel his plan, when Chuck bangs his head in the copy shop and needs an ambulance, and the gormless people in the copy shop are not going to help him out, the only person who helps him out is Jimmy, who goes and ends up, that's the thing that confirms for Chuck exactly everything that he knew about how devious the plan was in the first place to get Mesa Verde back. Like, Jimmy at his core is supposed to be a good guy, well-intentioned, happy to break the rules, but ultimately he's the anti-hero that we're going to come to know and love as somebody who we want to succeed. Chuck, he's just an evil bastard.
Almost reminds me of kind of like the Homer Simpson, Frank Grimes dynamic, where, like, Grimes just can't understand how, like, this guy's an idiot and everyone loves him and everything kind of turns up roses for him. And it's like, he just can't stand that Jimmy's this, like, unethical guy who will, like, go along with a bit of sleight of hand. And, like, we've kind of got this, like, really nice just kind of graying of the water where, like Jimmy will kind of do these little capers, and then he'll do these things that are like, all right, you can't do that. And you can just see this, like, yeah, I think there is, like, away from the family dynamic is just kind of, I think it's really interesting. Just like, it's like this guy just keeps, like, breaking all the rules, keeps working out for him. He just can't stand it. But yeah, it's brilliant. And just something you're talking about there, Jared, just like the scene with the mother. You talk about this being kind of like a way to, like, switch off and kind of a popcorn TV show. And it's sort of like, I think it does really well, kind of straddling this sort of like pristine TV and popcorn together, like stuff like that. Like, surely is kind of beyond popcorn.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's, like, it absolutely is, right? This was let's watch this because we've been building it up from the news as it was a couple of weeks ago. But like, I really think the 450 of these 10 episodes stand comparison against any series or any season that I've watched, where it's character development. There's moments of there's moments of tragedy. There's proper drama. There's like the boring legal stuff in season one, I think, pays off in this season in some respects, where all of the fastidiousness and the stuffed shirt of Hannah McGill, that's really important so that we understand why it's such a big deal, the switching of the numbers. And in that scene in court where he's like, yeah, I obviously didn't make a mistake. It's here, Carter. And everybody's rolling their eyes going, what an absolute cock. But the reason that the boring stuff in the first season now is important is because we also understand that that is important in procedural and it's going to have a significant impact. And it's so important for Chuck's brain. So not just popcorn, absolutely not. I think that, we can all justify spending so much time. Was it 50 hours in 5 seasons? So it's worth it.
We are going to get into the player ratings in just a moment, but one last takeaway we wanted to touch on, and I think this is something you actually wanted to get into last week, Jared, so something you've really been attached to from the start, is the setting of the whole thing. Like, it's obviously something that is lauded when it comes to Breaking Bad, and maybe that is a reason why we actually don't appreciate it enough when it comes to Better Call Saul. We're like, oh yeah, we're used to Albuquerque at this point. We spent 8 seasons in the company of the desert a couple of years ago. So maybe we actually need to talk about this and think about this a little bit more, that this is a character in itself almost.
It's so alien. It's such an alien landscape to, we look out and it's lush green here and it's always raining and the weather's not that good. But like when Mike is sitting in season 1, talking in the cafe about, does it ever snow here? And he's looking for something to break the monotony of the endless sunshine and the giant skies. Well, then he realizes that, hello.
Another Better Call Saul fan in.
Exactly. I think it is really important. As a character, I think it's hugely important.
100%. Joe, I'm not sure what you think. I think that almost it's like, I don't know, Mike, when he's out in the desert, that's just kind of has a whole different tone within everything else. There's like a different score, almost a different sort of tension when they just send Mike out into the desert. What we have here at the end is like him with his sniper beside his car in the wilderness, and then you're like, this music is actually kind of interesting, and it becomes the score, I just think at the start of season 3 is amazing, which we'll get into next week, but they definitely tap into the atmosphere that comes with the wilderness just outside the city very, very well at the end of season 2, I think.
That's the thing, you almost take for granted how well fleshed out everything is, how incredible the production is, the music, everything. I really like as well just sort of like the grounding of it in this day, like early 2000s, little like hints to that here and there. But yeah, no, they've done an incredible job on that front.
Let's we'll get into the ratings for some of the main characters in this. So what we do, we're going to go through the 6 main-ish characters. We're going to do Jimmy, Mike, Kim, Howard, Nacho, Chuck, give them rapid fire ratings, and then mention some of the recurring guests before we wrap up today. So Jimmy McGill, I'm going to lead this off with a 9, because I don't think you can really waver away from the first season score for Jimmy. He's just a phenomenal character, so well written, and also as well the idea of Jimmy McGill's conscience, I think, is developed quite well in this season. As you mentioned, Jared, the scene across the way from the printing shop, does he go in, does he not? He decides to go in. That shows that he's a good guy. Does he scam a couple of people? Of course he will. Does he make up false evidence? Of course he does. As a lawyer, he's a scumbag. As a human being, he's a good guy, and I think that is the complexities that I certainly love about this character. A 9.
Yeah, I'm going 9 as well. Great job fleshing this out, continuing to build it. Any scenes of Jimmy interacting with old people, just
fantastic
all day. Just kind of they're leaning more into kind of his con man, showman instincts that kind of get the better of him. But yeah, no, don't see how it can't be a 9. Also, it's worth kind of doing a bit of a dive on Bob Odenkirk, like just such an incredible actor. But yeah, no, very strong stuff from Jimmy.
Yeah, like this is the season where he kind of the thing that I found most frustrating about season 1 was I never had any idea when we were going to get to Saul, and Saul was kind of the whole reason for this to exist, and I wanted more of that, and I wanted like how he becomes the lawyer who ends up stashing all that money in Breaking Bad. And actually this bit is so important to get us on his side so that he's not just some ambulance chasing disbarred scumbag, as he gets referred to later on. Like, I think that again, high watermark for good quality drama. So no complaints. 9.5. You might even give him a 10 for this season.
You might have done, to be honest with you. Like, I think we're going to be on a similar page as well for Mike Ehrmantraut. I've given him a 9. He's like, it's hard to, when somebody's that badass, you feel afraid to even give him anything less than a 9. Just the way he almost like struts into the Salamanca's meeting, calls the shots on it, and it almost makes it a more incredible moment at the end when all of a sudden the tables have been turned on him a little bit, and somebody's got the don't sign on his car, and they've got the branch beeping his horn, and all of a sudden Mike has been a bit compromised because he seemed so invincible at that point. So you're excited for what happens to Mike. Just a sublime character.
The Tuco, the scene with Tuco where Tuco beats him up is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, he's doing this for money to protect his daughter-in-law and granddaughter. Like, the motivation is real. Now, I think that character probably could have been a little bit better developed. And I think that there could definitely be more strong female characters in this. It's definitely a worth putting on record that, like, we'll get to Kim in a minute. She's obviously much better in this season. But, like, for Mike, that's important because that's kind of the engine of why he becomes who he is. But I thought that scene was amazing. Just the cleverness of everything he's doing, and that kind of, again, that evolution of this genius mastermind criminal from a really good cop is an important thing, and you couldn't just blah 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 that away in a few scenes. So again, I think this all makes sense, and he's a solid 9.5 for me.
You're along the same line, Joe?
No, I'm actually on a slightly different wavelength here. Given that we are dealing with like what we've established is a brilliant show, I've actually gotten down on 7 for this series.
Right.
I think he's doing great work, but also I think he kind of leans into this kind of plot that to me is like slightly cartoonish and a bit, which is like the general cartel, that whole bad guy plot. I think like when I was watching it, I'm watching it with this kind of, you're almost looking for the show to justify itself and prove that's not a cash in or a tag on. And for me, there's a bad version of Better Call Saul that's way more of, that goes way heavier into that plot rather than the stuff that we've got going on with Jimmy, Chuck, Mike and Kim. So in terms of nitpicking, if we're going to be harsh, I'm giving him a 7.
That's interesting, right? So you're definitely leaning more towards the kind of what happens in the boardroom, what happens in the relationship side of things, rather than give us the gangsters and give us the backstory to the cartel.
Yeah, because I think you can give the gangsters, but I think sometimes it just it's like, it's like for entertainment value, they're nudging it that little bit more, and I think it just kind of, for me, especially because I had an initial problem with sort of marrying Mike into Saul's world in the kind of pre-Breaking Bad Better Call Saul world. So I was still kind of looking at it through that lens. And for me, while you're dealing with kind of establishing Mike in the story and you're going into these kind of slightly more cartoonish gangster plot lines, like obviously it's redeemed by like the amazing scenes when like they hook it back in, because it's like, oh shit, they're threatening his granddaughter. Like you can't really argue with that. But yeah, if we're nitpicking, I'm giving him a 7.
We can move on. I think we were actually going to move okay, so here's what we're going to do every season on this. If anybody has something good to say about Howard Hamlin, we will stop and talk about him. I'm giving him a 2 and happy to move on.
I think he deserves more than a 2. It's he's an excellent foil, so I'd be giving him a 5. But go on,
Joe. What
I'm giving Howard a nice 7. I love just sort of like, yeah, just like the kind of, this is the cartoonishness that I do appreciate in the show. It's like unreality of this guy, and it's like we're so early on in things. It's like, is this guy is this like an okay guy who seems like an asshole, or is this guy who seems like a bit of an asshole who's a total asshole? And there's this kind of, I don't know, I find there's this like menace to him. He's obviously like making Kim's life difficult. So yeah, no, I'm still in the Howard fan club.
Right, okay. There's a bit of a divergence there. I'm going right down the middle for Nacho Varga here and giving him a big fat 5.
Yeah, I'm going.
I still think that. Go on.
Sorry, yeah, like yeah, still you can see kind of what they're trying to do with him. Still unconvincing, which is probably part of the character, as in we're probably meant to have questions about him. But yeah, for me, it's not a home run. So yeah, but yeah, we'll give him a 5.
I think that there's something to come. They're developing this character. I'm assuming that he is going to evolve into somebody who has an emotional range. And I'm going to give
Chuck, then, our penultimate main character we're getting into. I've given Chuck an 8, and I think in this season, perhaps it's a bit harsh to give him an 8, perhaps he's a 9. I just think throughout season 2, we just get a greater sense of why he acts the way that he does. I think in season 1, thinking that he was a protector of the law profession is a bit flimsy, and I think suggesting that that is the single motivation for how he acts is actually a bit crap. But in season 2, we obviously get greater detail on that, going way back to his childhood, going back to their adulthood, when he's actually jealous of him, despite the fact that he's got far more money, a far better job than him. There's still a lot of jealousy that exists. I still think that there is a bit more to come from Chuck in terms of actually truly revealing to us why he behaves the way that he does. Like, I just feel that we're missing something still. I'm not sure what it is. It could be just pure conjecture on my part, but it just feels that the feelings he has towards Jimmy is just far stronger than any hate that Jimmy could ever feel for him, and that's indicative when Jimmy actually does a U-turn on Chuck and actually goes and saves his life and gets an emergency team to him. So I'm not sure about Chuck fully, so that's why I've given him an 8.
I think there was never that hatred at all on any level on Jimmy's side. That's the whole point. He was only doing all of that because he loves Kim so much, and he's not very good at expressing his emotions. So he's a doer, not a talker, our Jimmy. But from Chuck's perspective, I think the other thing that has to be factored in here, he's mentally ill, and that kind of they have minor conversations around this at various stages throughout this. But like, he invented a new illness that was so egregious and outrageous that it was almost impossible for anybody to disprove it, even though in one of the very early scenes we realized that he's in a hospital bed that's electronic and it's having no impact on him. So that mental illness, I think, plus the jealousy, plus the fact that Jimmy is there constantly in his life. Like, Jimmy comes to him every day. He's the thing that's keeping him alive, and it's probably the thing that has tipped him into the his jealousy of Jimmy is the thing that has tipped him into this level of mental illness. So it's kind of, he's constantly being poisoned by the thing that is protecting him and saving him.
Joe, what do you reckon?
Yeah, going for an 8 there as well. That's an interesting last point, Jared, like whether this hatred has tipped him to this kind of point where he's like become this kind of recluse who's like afraid of electricity, or is it the other way around? Is there kind of bigger picture things going on with him, and then this kind of irrational, well, I'd call it irrational hatred towards Jimmy is an offshoot of that rather than the opposite around. But yeah, big picture though, massive season for Chuck, putting in great shift.
Yeah. Then finally, in terms of the main characters, Kim Wexler, I'm stopping at an 8 with Kim rather than going all the way to a 9, because I think it's a season of 2 parts for her. She was obviously pretty bad in season 1. I didn't really get the whole point of Kim in season 1. I totally get it now. I think she was fantastic in the second part. That being said, in the first part of season 1, she does engage in a bit of conmanship with Jimmy, and then revisits it again in the middle of the season. Like, she's obviously somebody who's very conflicted on certain things, and she would probably say during season 1 she's not conflicted at all, or during season 2 as well. I think she would say that, but I think that that's just not the case. I think she can be as pissed off as she wants with Jimmy falsifying evidence, but if she was that appalled by Jimmy McGill and his practices, she would not be in business with him. It's simple as that. So I definitely think that there's going to be a bit of a tipping of the scale with Kim Wexler, potential untoward lawyer in the future seasons. That's my prediction for her. And that scene in season 2, when she sticks up for Jimmy, when she knows what Jimmy's done, she knows exactly that Jimmy forged the documents. Best scene in the entire season. That for me was the moment that Kim Wexler arrives in Better Call Saul, and she's the one who points out to all of us very blatantly that Chuck is extremely jealous of Jimmy, and she says, "I feel sorry for you guys."
8.5 for me.
Fair.
I think this is an excellent comeback. She's completely, absolutely vital, puts in an amazing performance, is given good lines, is given some meaningful depth in a way that wasn't really there for me in season 1. Yeah, I think that you're right. There is a conflict within Kim. She also has come from the mailroom. She also has that background where she has watched the fat cats at Hamlin McGill and is now reaching a point where, you know, she's a brilliant lawyer in her own right, and that gets recognized by the fact that a job offer comes in for her in the middle of all this, and she wins the contract back, and she can deliver on her own what that giant law firm could deliver for Mesa Verde. So obviously unbelievably proficient. She could do with a few more funny lines. They could have given her a bit more humor and a bit more crack, but you know,
True.
Pretty good.
Are you with us, Joe?
Yeah, I'm an 8 as well. It was actually another thing that was interesting watching last week's show was I'd actually forgotten how sort of in the background she was in season 1, and then obviously they've done a lot of work in season 2, kind of establishing her as such an important character. I think she's really important as well between sort of the kind of crazy genius Chuck, the kind of corpo Krat Howard, and then kind of Jimmy, kind of the con man, and she's sort of floating between all of these.
A bit of all of them.
Exactly, yeah.
Good shout. Just before we wrap up, then we might do this every season. We can certainly do it for season 2. Who's your favorite recurring / not that obvious star in this? I'm going to go for my favorite guy. He's basically my favorite character in all of television. It's Daniel Price, Wormold, the guy who bought the Hummer and the spinny things on the wheel. Like that is how if I ever got into the drug trade and was selling pills to people, I would also do something similarly stupid with my money, Daniel. So I feel you.
Yeah, I love him. It's like, it's funny as well because like Breaking Bad's kind of this guy who gets caught up in this in these circumstances, and he does all these like crazy things, becomes this big like drug lord. Then like this other guy kind of gets caught up in stuff and just completely like shits the bed and buys a Hummer and like gets his baseball card sold. And yeah, I think he's brilliant.
I'm also a big fan of Ernesto. He's got a couple of good one-liners in there, and then also the camera guy and drama girl that help Jimmy out whenever he wants to make an ad. They are exceptionally good characters as well.
What did you guys make of the kind of ancillary? Sorry,
the ancillary.
I've just
the sort of ancillary bad guys. So kind of when Hector and Tuco are around, what did you guys make of their contributions?
Tuco's amazing. Every scene with Tuco today, well, I know there's only been like a couple of them, have been brilliant. Like being out in the desert in season 1, and as Jura said, the altercation at the fast food restaurant when Mike tries to frame him. Just absolutely brilliant. And there is a comedy element to him, and I think that they try and play that up quite a bit, like between his aunt in season 1 or his grandma in season 1. I think it's all great.
I love the ads, the comic relief of the Jimmy's ad campaign to make the ads. All of that whole part where he's working with those kids to, have a dolly and
in the airfield
to get on the base in the airfield is absolutely classic. I think all that bit was I thought was genuinely properly funny. And that's the light relief to the bit where this man lies to his brother about his dying mother's final words. Like that is one of the most horrific interfamilial crimes that you can imagine anybody committing at any level. Like it's pure nastiness not to share with your brother your mother's dying words. When you think about it, like it's not quite at the level of Tony Soprano trying to strangle his mother or suffocate his mother, but it's not far off it.
I was thinking of going back and binging The Sopranos. That plan is now being shelved until I forget about that spoiler that has just been dropped here.
That's a great idea, Eoin. You should look into doing that sometime.
Listen, lads, good work. Thanks for joining.